Welcome to the presentation on how entrepreneurs create wealth in transition economies by Akshaya Rangarajan, Roshni Prajapati, Ruchi Patel, and Sagandeep Singh. Entrepreneurship has been flourishing in the transition economies of Central and Eastern Europe, the newly independent states of the former Soviet Union, and East Asia. Entrepreneurs in these countries, characterized by their sheer energy, relentless strategies, and sometimes controversial practices, have fundamentally transformed these economies and have caught worldwide attention. That is, entrepreneurs in the startups they found create wealth and push these economies to a higher level of competitiveness. But how? Let's explore. In today's presentation, first, let's explain the research gap to be addressed and the purpose of this research. Next, let's explore the rise of entrepreneurship and its golden era. Upon explaining who the entrepreneurs are and deriving the three major entrepreneurial strategies, let's explore the lessons to be learned. Finally, after explaining the executive commentary on entrepreneurship, let's relate the concepts to the Canadian economy. Research gap. Studies in the past have explored numerous country and region-specific patterns. However, there have been only few attempts shedding light on the overall development of entrepreneurship in transition economies from Shanghai to St. Petersburg. Also, while there are many cultural, political, and economic differences permeating these countries, recent publications such as those by the World Bank and OECD have grouped them under the collective label of transition economies. Therefore, the purpose of this research is to answer how entrepreneurs can rise to create wealth in environments traditionally hostile to entrepreneurial activities and what can be learned from such an experience. This is because increased knowledge about the wealth creation process throughout transition economies can greatly enrich global entrepreneurship practice and theoretical implication for future research. First, the rise of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs are the founders of new businesses. Despite harsh political conditions, entrepreneurship existed in virtually all of the countries before major transition took place in 1980s. Before the transition, the private sector, which had a number of peculiar labels such as the gray, second, and underground economy, was usually small, labor-intensive, and often informal. By the 1980s, most socialist governments started to loosen restrictions on the private sector, resulting in an initial wave of entrepreneurship. At that time, however, these countries were reluctant to legalize private property. The government still imposed a limit on the size of a private firm, such as 7 employees in Hungary and 8 in China. What is remarkable is the rapid rise of entrepreneurship in such an ambiguous environment with little protection of private property. Wherever and whenever the government had relatively few restrictions on the private sector, pockets of entrepreneurship, such as those in South China, would start to develop. The golden era for entrepreneurial startups throughout transition economies was during the 1990s. The most fundamental driving force was the removal of the yoke of communism throughout CEE and the NIS. The other underlying force was the continued deterioration of the state sector. A combination of the lure of capitalism as a pull factor and the failure of state-owned enterprises as a push factor resulted in the abolition of many restrictions on private firms. In turn, these transitions opened the floodgates of entrepreneurship, which rose to undermine the foundation of the socialist economy. Who are these entrepreneurs? What drives people to become entrepreneurs has remained an intriguing puzzle around the world, and perhaps more so in the transition economies. 4 types of entrepreneurs have emerged. That is, farmers, grey individuals, cadres, and professionals. Farmers. Although private farming was eradicated in most socialist countries, Poland never nationalized its agriculture, and its private farmers owned more than 70% of the land in 1987. Even in countries where private farming had not been allowed before, the loosening of government regulation spurred a great deal of private farming. However, most private farmers would not bother to register their undertaking as a company. Over time, some of them organized along more formal lines and attempted to grow beyond the family holdings. While most of them remained small, some of the better managed ones have become larger and more visible. Gray individuals. Gray individuals were usually likely to specialize in various intermediary services, both legal and illegal. Because there were very few possibilities under state socialism to lawfully organize entrepreneurial ventures, unlawful ways emerged in a gray economy. Despite its lack of legality, the gray economy was widely tolerated and accepted by the public. Ranging from small scale tax evasion and bribery to large scale mafia practices, all of these activities may be in violation of some laws and regulations. Since the emerging legal and regulatory frameworks are underdeveloped, their enforcement leaves numerous loopholes. As a result, these grey entrepreneurs emerge to take advantage of the loopholes as intermediaries connecting individuals and organizations with economic exchanges that otherwise would not have taken place. The size of the overall grey economy is very difficult to estimate. However, the tentative figures in the mid 1990s, as seen in this table, put the total size of the unofficial grey economy at approximately 11 to 12% in the GDP in the Poland, about 30% in Bulgaria and Hungary, 40 to 50% in Russia and Ukraine, and in the extreme cases over 60% in Georgia. Cadres. Cadres are the former Communist Party leaders and officers that are widely believed to benefit from the transition by becoming entrepreneurs. Since people with more education are found, in general, to do better in market economies, cadres who, as a group, are better educated than the general population are thus likely to be in an advantageous position during the transition. Power accumulated under state socialism can be converted into assets of high value in a transition economy. During privatization, for example, strategically located cadres can take the advantage of their position in acquiring state property. Cadres can also tap into their personal networks to acquire valuable resources from their former colleagues still in the government, maneuvering across different sectors. Professionals. Professional entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs who previously held professional position not directly related to the party state, such as lawyers, managers, engineers, and professors. In transition economies, they enhance the technology and professionalism of private firms, which traditionally concentrate on low-tech, labor-intensive sectors. Professionals also
We will now look at the major entrepreneurial strategies. The first one is prospecting. Prospectors are young, aggressive companies with a changing market and flexible organizational structures, while defenders are companies with a specific market niche and a well established organizational structure led by older, more consecutive executives. Startups are frequently portrayed as entrepreneurs who use speed and stealth to disrupt competitors and be first movers, forcing their competitors to be defenders or reactors. Such rapid movement frequently provides startups with significant first mover advantages by allowing them to build market share and brand awareness in new niche markets. A perfect example is Optimus Computer. Founded in 1988, by 1995 it controlled 35% of the Polish PC market. Optimus thrived by consistently outperforming competitors in terms of products and services. It provided locally assembled, low-cost PCs while competitors imported models nearing the end of their product life cycle. Finally, while larger competitors struggle to compete on speed and stealth, successful startups frequently attract a large number of other private firms to follow their fast movers. We will now look at the second strategy, which is networking. Entrepreneurial firms all over the world rely on networking as a strategy. In transition economies, almost every firm must focus on its networks, which are mandated by the institutional environment. Because certain market supporting institutions are lacking, managers and entrepreneurs must form networks to perform basic functions such as gathering market information, interpreting regulations, and enforcing contracts. Most companies must have two sets of networks. The first one is with other firms, managers, and entrepreneurs, such as suppliers, buyers, and competitors, and the second one with government officials. It is not surprising that entrepreneurs recognize the value of maintaining positive relationships with government officials, particularly those in tax departments. For example, in Russia, every private company is required to provide the tax authorities with 28 quarterly reports, and most private firms in China must pay nearly 50 different types of taxes. We will now look at a boundary blurring, which is divided into public private boundaries and legal illegal boundaries. Non-private startups are particularly visible in the Chinese economy and have been the largest contributor to GDP since the early 1990s. Local governments benefit from these businesses because they not only create jobs but also provide income streams and tax revenues over which local governments have control. As a result, these public-private hybrid firms represent a gradual transition from public to private ownership. Lucky Transportation is such a company that masquerades as a private firm. Private firms continue to face significant challenges in obtaining state-owned controlled resources such as bank credit. Carpenter Tan, a highly successful private startup in China, for example, was forced to use national media advertisements to plead with their banks, all of which were state-owned. The campaign sparked a national debate about why it was so difficult for private companies to raise capital compared to SOEs that barely paid interest. The blurring of legal-illegal boundaries has reached epic proportions in some CEE and NIS countries. Russia appears to be the world's most corrupt major economy. According to one estimate, between 70 and 80% of private companies may be paying extortion money to mafia-style criminal gangs. Despite its success, public opinion in Bulgaria widely suspects Multigroup of being a well-organized scheme to siphon off public funds from the communist era and launder them for the benefit of ex-communist officials. And in the absence of a strong informal legal and regulatory regime, informal constraints such as mafia-imposed rules and regulations become more prevalent. We will now look at what can be learned. The first one is dealing with environmental turbulence. The first way to deal with environmental turbulence is forming alliances with larger, more legitimate, and stronger players. Collaboration with government agencies allows startups to tap into the resources of partners, reducing environmental risk for entrepreneurs. The second one is take action as a group to promote entrepreneurial development. Entrepreneurs should band together to form industry or business owners association in order to lobby the new government, the media and the public about the role they play in wealth creation in the economy. The third one is make connections with established educational institutions. Collaboration with educational institutions gives entrepreneurs legitimacy among the next generation of employees and entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs can also gain access to researchers at these institutions whose findings may help to spread the word about the importance of entrepreneurship in transition economies. The second lesson is transforming raw entrepreneurship into strategic leadership. Entrepreneurs need to firstly create and share a long-term strategic vision. While entrepreneurs may operate without a clearly articulated strategy when the organization is small, developing an explicit long-term strategic vision becomes more important as the organization grows larger. Such ability appears to distinguish the most successful startups such as China's Hope Group and Russia's Wimpelcon. Secondly, they need to create dynamic core competencies. The new competition necessitates ongoing investment in core competencies-based stronghold that can be defended and strengthened, which frequently leads to a deep niching strategy for many entrepreneurial firms. These core competencies must be dynamic and constantly updated and expanded. The Optimus computer from Poland is a prime example. Thirdly, is to emphasize human capital. Given their limited resources, entrepreneurial firms must compete on their ability to do more with less. Making the most of their employees' human capital becomes critical. Entrepreneurs should strive not only to hire, train, and invest in the best talent, but also to ensure that such human capital remains within the firm. Lastly, is to make good use of technology. Many entrepreneurial firms are uniquely positioned to leapfrog by acquiring some of the most advanced technology in manufacturing and services. Recent examples are the various internet startups springing up in the economies.
Now let's look at lessons for foreign entrants. The first one is to treat entrepreneurial partners sensibly. How to treat these entrepreneurial firms differently from SOEs remains a major task for interested foreign entrants. Foreign entrants may need to unlearn some of the uncomparable prior notions about firms in transition economies when working with entrepreneurial startups. The second lesson is to take collective action to promote mutual interests. Foreign entrants' collective goals, which typically include market openness and legal reforms in transition economies, are more likely to be achieved if their collective efforts are stronger and more successful. For instance, in response to China's bans on direct marketing and internet investment in 1998 and 1999, American direct marketing companies and internet venture capital firms pressed their claims through US trade negotiators in China's World Trade Organization talks and ultimately obtained significant concessions from the Chinese side. The third lesson is to establish alliances. The justification for why overseas competitors must form alliances is similar to that of local business owners. However, alliance approach like this does not always result in joint ventures. Foreign competitors may not have much of a choice but to create wholly owned subsidiaries in some knowledge intensive industries in order to protect their intellectual property. Let's look at some of the warnings that were proposed in the article. In transition economies, the future for entrepreneurship is not always promising. Many entrepreneurs in transition economies have appropriated or redistributed capital in their favor rather than creating wealth. How entrepreneurship can be created in an ethical or legal way is that is long lasting is vital because many entrepreneurial endeavors are tainted by gray activities. Therefore, more businesses will leave the unofficial gray economy if tax regulations are simplified and marginal rates are decreased. Additionally, because the rules are transparent, there is no room for officials to get out of paying rent. Let's look at some of the creative destructions. In these conditions that have historically been unfriendly to entrepreneurship, how do entrepreneurs and the firms they form generate wealth? The short answer is that they employ active boundary blurring, broad networking, and aggressive prospector and guerrilla tactics to achieve this. Using a creative destruction process that Joseph Schumpeter initially emphasized, entrepreneurs generate wealth across transition economies. Startup businesses essentially design a different organizational structure that competes with and ultimately might undermine the public sector. Entrepreneurs may be interested only in their own interests and have no regard for official doctrine, but as a group, they join a vast social movement whose invisible hand overthrows a failed socialist administration. Such extensive shifts are a manifestation of the outstanding, inventive, and destructive force of competition and entrepreneurship, both for the entrepreneurs who take part in the transitions and for the economies that adopt them. Let's look at some of the executive commentary given by Stanislav Shechnia, who is the CEO of Millicom International Cellular, Russia, and CIS. He says all the different cultural economies seem to be very heterogeneous and yet seek to be rich as the Western nations. He adds that entrepreneurial activity is one of the factors that determine the success of these. He gives a few of reasons to study entrepreneurship in transition economies. One of them is the need to change the negative attitude towards entrepreneurship. According to Shekshnia, young people should dream about entrepreneurial careers and prepare for them. This will ensure the economic development of their countries. One major point he picks from the article is that innovation frequently requires a certain level of adaptability and the capacity to blur boundaries. He suggests that any company's success in the current economy depends largely on its capacity for innovation. There are two major challenges that will determine entrepreneurial companies' success when they enter a new stage of their development. The first difficulty is professional management, which means how to secure a shift from a small, frequently family run company to a significant multi million dollar firm. At this point, a lot of attempts fail. Many owners could not become professional managers, and their companies perished with them. This can be seen in the example previously mentioned about Wimpelcom. The first solution suggested by Shakespeare is to hire professional managers and give them organizational control over the company. The second solution is to bring a strong partner with a competence in management, such as a large older firms, or in transition economies, this can be a foreign partner. The third option is selling the business. Although it may be more dramatic, it may also be the most effective way to make money and move on to start a new enterprise. The second and one of the largest obstacles to transition economies' prosperity is a strong commitment to business ethics. Transition economies can therefore do well if entrepreneurs can adopt the principles of integrity, diligence, reliability, and consistency.
Now let us look at this paper from a Canadian economic point of view. Over the last 10 years, the percentage of the population involved in entrepreneurship in Canada has increased by more than 50%, according to the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. In 2021, about 20% of the adult population was involved in planning or starting up a business. Additionally, according to a recent statistics on entrepreneurs, immigrants are twice as likely as Canadian-born people to start their own businesses. In 2021, Canada will welcome over 350,000 immigrants, fostering the nation's entrepreneurial spirit. It has been well established that entrepreneurs and other outsiders are the main vehicles behind the growth and introduction of radical new technologies in the country. Several large sectors of the Canadian economy, such as retail, construction, and healthcare, rely on small and medium-sized firms which make a significant contribution to the overall economy and provide valuable employment. Also, in a period of economic turbulence, such as the one we seem to be entering now, the entrepreneurial skills are valuable, whether in a large company or a startup. The key role of the entrepreneur is to identify opportunities and generate enthusiasm, vision, and plans needed to create a successful venture, which Canadian entrepreneurs largely seem to be fulfilling. Moving on, let us take an example of a Canadian firm and analyze it in relation to the concepts discussed in the paper. CEO Shahrzad Rafati established the Canadian media and technology business Broadband TV Corporation in 2005. According to Comscore, the business has the second largest video property by unique users in 2019. Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada is home to the company's headquarters, with Sony Pictures, Viacom 18, and the NBA amongst BBTV's clients. Rafati was born in 1979 in Tehran, Iran, and immigrated to Vancouver, British Columbia as a teenager. In 2005, she completed her BSc in Computer Science at the University of British Columbia and was also awarded an honorary doctorate by University of Canada West in 2020. According to the paper, Rafati falls under the category of a professional entrepreneur as she is much more educated than the other categories mentioned in the paper, namely farmers, grey individuals, and cadres. Prospectors are companies that focus on innovation and change, have a changing market, and have a flexible organizational structure under the direction of a younger and more aggressive leadership. Rafati's idea was to basically create software which would, for all intents and purposes, change how companies essentially approached piracy, resulting in technology which enabled companies to claim and monetize content uploaded by fans, which basically is fairly significant. In 2019, BBTV announced that its content garnered 575 million unique viewers each month, making it second only to Google in terms of all monthly internet viewership. The Canadian entrepreneur continues to lead the company while also serving as a board member for several organizations. Next, the jewelry business Jenny Bird was established in 2008 and is named after its primary designer. The natural settings that Jenny grew up within Elora, Ontario, served as inspiration for her passion of design. Her passion for creation inspired her to create Jenny Bird, a jewelry firm that has experienced phenomenal growth over the past 10 years and is now well known internationally. Jenny's entrepreneurial strategy was more of a networking oriented strategy when we compare it to the elements of this paper. She has networked her way into the numerous prestigious stores throughout the world like Harvey Nichols, Indigo, and Nordstrom, to name a few. Her contemporary pieces marry creativity with the bold, fearless spirit catching the eye of many Hollywood celebrities, stylists, and influential people around the world. From Mandy Moore to Kylie Jenner, Selena Gomez to Mindy Kaling, everybody loves her jewelry. Her designs are striking yet wearable and are designed to be worn for years to come. Jenny has accumulated an outstanding collection of honors over the years and has been on a number of prestigious lists. She has also taken home the 2018 Accessories Designer of the Year and the 2017 Canada's Accessory Designer of the Year award. The paper also discussed about grey individuals and grey economy. So let's take a look where Canada stands with reference to this concept. Firstly, the grey economy refers to the economic activity and transactions involving goods or services that are partially concealed from the government. The individuals who are regularly involved in this economy are referred to as grey individuals. A common term used for this is underground activity. In British Columbia, underground activity accounted for an estimated 3.7% of the GDP in 2018. Underground economy actively and negatively affects the economic growth in Canada and reduces tax revenues for all levels of government, putting pressure on the government's ability to provide the services and benefits those Canadians enjoy. Left unchecked, the underground economy would erode people's faith in the integrity and fairness of the Canada's tax system, undermine the competitiveness of honest businesses, as well as cause honest taxpayers to bear the tax load of those who cheat. Industries that are more prone to underground activity, such as crop production, residential construction, and accommodation and food services, have a larger economic presence in provinces and territories that have a higher share of underground economic activity. The underground economy is a serious problem and for years has been a consistent issue in Canada. Now, this can be done in three types. Number one is the hidden sector. The hidden sector is comprised of activities that are productive and legal but are deliberately concealed from the authorities due to individuals wanting to avoid taxes, social security contributions, labor standards, administrative procedures, or to increase the benefits they receive. Activities in the hidden sector include skimming, unreported construction related activities, hidden rent income, undeclared tips, and unreported trade related activity. Number two is the informal sector. This sector includes informal production activities associated with establishments that are not registered with fiscal or social authorities. The activities within scope of Statistics Canada's research are childcare in the home, private household services, other personal care services, and direct sales of agricultural products. Although it is possible that underground economy activity exists in other industries in the informal sector, they have been excluded from Statistics Canada's estimates until further research determines the magnitude of this missing productive activity. Now, moving on to payments in cash. Payments provided in cash are not in themselves underground economical activity. However, payments in cash or in kind have traditionally been considered undetectable and have therefore been seen to be synonymous with underground economic activity terms. It may be tempting to pay for certain things in cash because we think that saving a few dollars here and there can't hurt. However, we fail to see the larger impact of what happens when we do. The underground economy is a form of fraud and is considered an illegal economic activity. Conclusively, we dwelled deeply into the theoretical ideas of this paper, such as the many sorts of business methods, the lessons that newcomers from abroad might take away, etc., and tried to relate it with what's actually going on in the Canadian economy, analyzing the gray areas of the Canadian economy as well. When it comes to Canada's latest entrepreneurial statistics, we can safely say that the long-term post-COVID outlook is pretty good. The advantages the government provides to young and beginning business owners are gaining more and more attention from Canadians. In addition, targeted programs encourage minorities, immigrants, and women to take the initiative to start and run their own business ideas. The bottom line, as companies continue to develop and come up with efficient ways to maintain their market share, entrepreneurship will continue to flourish in the Great White North. Thank you.